Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Conversations. I'm your host, Katie Augustyn. So, I'm a spiritual energy healer, I'm a transformation coach, and I'm the head of the Transformation Center based in Westport, Connecticut. So, at the center, we do a variety of things. We have classes and workshops, we have sound baths in the backyard during the warm months, just all sorts of cool stuff. So, I'm going to put up our contact info here, and you can check out all the events online at Transformation Centers. Really all about helping you gain greater self-awareness. And that way you can let go of your limiting beliefs and transform them into more empowering beliefs. You can access your inner knowing. And this allows you to be who you truly are. And from there, what it's all about. So I'm going to take this down. Yeah. So I recently started this conscious conversation show because I'm so into conscious creation right now. And the perfect guest to start off with, I love this, the synchronicity, is Carolyn Coleridge. So welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm going to put up your contact info so people can see what you are all about. If I could find that slide. There it is. Yeah, so I haven't met Carolyn in person yet, but I discovered her through something that she wrote in Natural Awakenings magazine a few months ago. And it just really touched me. And I said, I just have to meet her and talk to her about what she's up to. So that's how this evolved. And I'm going to read a little bit about her so you can get to know her before we get started. So Carolyn Coleridge is a psychotherapist. She's an intuitive and a healer. And she's been in these fields for 27 years now. She has a master's in clinical social work from Columbia University. Her spiritual background includes training at the Edgar Cayce Institute in New York and at a spiritualist church. Carolyn is also a Reiki master, an integrated energy therapist master instructor, a pranic healer, a theta healing practitioner, and the author of 3 books. She worked at UCLA as an energy healer for the UCLA Pediatric Pain Program for 6 years. And I saw a little interview she did on CNN back in those days. It was really, really very interesting. And she helps you work with your mind, body, and soul. She has a meditation and healing center called Conscious Creations in Bloomfield, Connecticut. So that's her contact info right there. So let me take this down and we'll get started. So again, welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm so interested in everything that you do. It's like all the things that I love in one place, basically. So I knew that we had a lot in common. And how did you actually how did you get into what you're doing right now?
Yeah. Well, when I was getting my master's in New York City at Columbia, I was 28 at the time, and I was just, I'd done different jobs. I worked on the Hill for under Governor Wilder, and I said I don't want to get an MBA and I don't want to be a lawyer. But when I went to Columbia, I just started seeing ghosts out of the blue. It was the weirdest thing. I'd wake up and I had an apartment on 116th Street in Harlem and 120th Street. And I would just see ghosts. I'd wake up, see ghosts, ghosts, ghosts. And it scared me. I was like, oh my gosh, like, where are these ghosts coming from? Never happened before. I was sensitive, but I didn't know I was intuitive. Now, my mother, who was a chemistry teacher in Connecticut, she actually would always see ghosts and have experiences and would talk about different things. I thought it was just her. So I called her. I said, Mom, my God, I don't know what's happening at 28. I'm seeing ghosts. And she's like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, that happens. And she goes, well, how are your grades? And I'm like, how are my grades? She's like, Columbia is expensive. Are your grades good? Are you liking the program? And I was like, I am seeing ghosts. They are knocking, like they would push my bed, or I'd wake up and they would just start talking to me. And I realized I was kind of doing afterlife therapy. I joke, like I was talking to them and I'd wake up and I was like, what are they doing here? So because of that, I went to a healer. I looked up and I went to, I was into spirituality a little bit. I think I just read Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. So I went to a spiritual shop and found a name of a person, one of those magazines, Celeste Viola. And she was a healer. And she said, oh, you're opening up spiritually. And you have to learn how to block the energies that are coming to you. And I said, how did that happen? She goes, did you do anything? I said, no. And I said, no, I didn't do. She goes, you sure you didn't open up some way? I said, "Mm." I said, oh, there was a book called Sophie Burnham, I think it was, How to Connect, Contact Your Angels. So I did the workshop. She said, well, you did it, but you didn't protect yourself because you probably were always intuitive. So she told me to put the guardian angels around me. She told me how to work with my energy. I became a Reiki master. And it was really just to stop this energy. And then it did. They didn't bother me as much. Every once in a while, I would see something. But because of that, it pushed me. And here I am sitting at Columbia, the first social work school, the oldest in the country. And I can't tell my supervisors I'm seeing and hearing ghosts. So I had to learn what was going on. And then I realized, wow, like this, but this is interesting. And then I would sit with my clients and I started seeing their auras. Just started, colors would pop up for them. I'm like, what is going on? It was weird. So I learned about becoming a Reiki master and a Reiki healer. And then I said, I have to incorporate it because the information I would give them was so helpful and so healing to them. So I started doing classes at the Edgar Cayce Institute in New York and a spiritualist church. And then I just started to combine everything. Not at the beginning, because I was terrified to be a licensed therapist and a reader. So I would only do it on the side. And then different experiences happened where I had to combine them. Yeah.
Yes, yes. That's, I mean, to me, that's like, it's the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
what you do, combining it like that. Yes,
Well,
yes.
psychic means of the soul, to understand someone's soul journey, and psyche is of the mind. So it's the same root of the word. So it is really, when you work with somebody's personality, it's okay. But some people are having, and a lot of us are having soul crisis. So we need to understand what's the soul. And when I was 28, I was right before my 29.5, which is your Saturn return. And Saturn return is when the planet Saturn comes into your orbit and says, what are you here for? What's your journey? What's your life lessons? And relationships, health, family, career all come up to play. So it was interesting that the universe was showing me this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I could either run from it or I could either embrace it. And I like, that because I had my mom and my grandmother, I called my mom again. I said, I'm still seeing ghosts. And she said, Mom, to my grandmother. She goes, oh, she's like us. She's like, oh, that's great. How are her grades? They didn't think it was strange. So, I was just like, it's part and parcel. When you work with people's soul, you heal them on a deeper level. And as we have all these soul crises going on the planet, like coronavirus, corona means crown, the crown chakra opened worldwide. We're quarantined. Quarantine is 40 days and 40 nights. Think of Jesus, 40 days in the desert to open up our awareness that there's something deeper happening. There's something, we have to take care of our health, our bodies, our families, our education of kids in school. So this was like, something that was happening. We're seeing 2020, it happened in 2020. So all these spiritual cycles were actually put out there in the world if you follow them, because actually it was 2020, but in Ethiopia, which has a 13-year calendar, and it was 2012. And if all the Mayan calendar says in 2012, everything is going to break down. And it did, but it was really 2020, it was really 2012, because Ethiopia allegedly is where the Garden of Eden was found, where everything started. So it's kind of interesting when I found that out, I was like, oh, so this is our 2012, 2020. So it's a lot about, looking deeper into souls and changing from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, which is the age of co-creation with the universe.
Yes, perfect, perfect divine timing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you work with people, do they come to you for specific things? Do they know what they're getting into when they come to you, or do they come for one thing and then they end up, finding out a whole lot of other? How does that work?
That's a great question. Well, I get a lot of people that come actually at 28 to 31 through their first Saturn return. A lot. A lot of people at their second Saturn return in their mid 50s, or like 59 and a half to 58.5 to 61 is the second. I get a lot of people because that's when your soul really calls to you. It's like a clock. Like every 7 years, our soul goes through a cycle. So age 7 is normal. When kids are like a little more connected into the earth plane, 7 more years is 14. It's like a clock. 7 more years is 21. That's adulthood. When the clock strikes 12, 28, that's when the planet Saturn starts moving in and hits at 29.5. So a lot of people are just like, everything's going round, like I'm having a nervous breakdown. And I explain that to them and it actually calms them. They're like, oh, right before 30, I think I'm not sure if I want to marry this guy. I'm not sure if I want to do this. I don't want to do this career anymore. So when I normalize it in mental health, it really helps them. Now, if people come to me as a therapist in a clinic, in a contracted, modality I'm working with, they're going therapy. Okay, I'll give them a little bit of the Saturn. They come to me as a healer and intuitive. That's a whole different angle. And then I will, do the spiritual cycles, do energy healing, do a read, what's coming up, ancestors, mediumship, whatever is coming up for their soul. So it's a little bit deeper. So, and sometimes people know when they see me, they Google me, they see I combine both. But, if people aren't going in for that, they're coming as a therapist, I'm not going to open up that world. It's not appropriate because that's not what they're seeking. And it's really about social work, stay where the client is. But if people are coming the other way, well, all bets are off.
I see. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. People do usually they're drawn to a therapist or a healer for something pretty specific. They're drawn to you in that role. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, they usually kind of know something about me because you can Google me, you can find me if they're looking for that. And I kind of put it out there now at my healing center. I'm combining both therapy. There's therapy there. I have a meditation room, and then I have a reading healing room. So depending on what they come in, because mind is therapy, body is a healing, and spirit is intuition. Mind, body, spirit.
Right, right. And it's all, I mean, it's all connected, obviously. And in my world, it's hard to address one without addressing the other.
100%, yes. And I can catch it if is it really a spiritual awakening or is it really psychosis, and how to, combine it, or how to get help for either way. Maybe you need to go to a shaman. Maybe you need to go to a healer. Maybe you need to ground your energy more. Maybe you do need to be med compliant right now for something else. So that's kind of good. I'm like the gateway to the different ways our mind, our body, and our spirit can intertwine, and also can cause breakdowns or breakthroughs depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, that's so true. And in this day, do you find that there are more people that are becoming uh, more aware of all of this, more self-aware, more aware of what's available in the healing arts?
That's a great question. I'm from Connecticut. I went to Wesleyan and I grew up here, but I moved to LA for, I was there for 20 years, and people are very open there. A lot of them are seeking, and allegedly LA is at the throat chakra. It's on certain ley lines, Santa Monica, the city of Los Angeles, the San Gabriel Mountains. Gabriel's an angel of communication. It's the film industry. So people like feel that energy, and there's a lot of people like almost gold seeking or seeking something. That's where the gold, rush happened. So they're a lot more open, but it's hard to say, but way to Connecticut, it's a little bit more different. There's pockets, but it's not like everywhere. Like there's a Buddhist place, a yoga place in LA. It's a little different here. It's more conservative. So, but I think I'm a little biased because I look for those places. So it seems like everyone is opening up to me because that's all I'm looking for. I grew up Episcopalian, so I'm not going to an Episcopal church like I used to growing up, where, people are a lot more conservative in different ways. But yeah, I feel like though, if you look on some of the bestsellers, there are like, psychiatrists now that are intuitive, they're out there. There's a doctor talking about near-death experience. I think his name is, it was a neuroscience. I can't remember his name. I'm going to say it wrong. So there's more people. There's the Long Island Medium. Yes, I think people are more open, that we're a little bit more, and that's mainstream, that there's something more. So I feel like this is the timing, that 20 years or years ago when I went to Columbia, I think my soul, my universe, the universe knew that I needed this for now. I feel like all that work was to lead up to right now. And I do feel like people are seeking on a deeper level, and we're
Yeah,
becoming
yeah,
more
no,
universal.
right, right. More, like you said, more seeking, more open. That's what and also all ages too. The younger generation, they seem to be more open to exploring and maybe accepting things that some of our, at least my generation wasn't. But then again, I meet older people who are, my age and older even, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, okay. It's never too late.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, I do have a lot of older women that come to me in their 60s and like late 50s and their 60s. And I'm like, wow, they're even more so than the younger. I'm like, what is going on here? I said, oh my God, they're part of the 60s, when people were taking PCP and doing other stuff. So that time was the age of the age of Aquarius. That song, was coming out. So people were seeking then. And then there was about a 60-year cycle. They said that from the 60s to now, 2020, it was a certain cycle where Pluto, I'm not an astrologer, but Pluto did something. Pluto's about the planet of transformation, evolution, like opening up. So it's kind of interesting that that's why that generation being more open in some ways, because that was talked about years ago.
Yeah, right. When we were growing up, I grew up in the 60s, and anything was acceptable in those days. Everybody was learning new things and discovering and experimenting with things. And then I think we had our responsible periods where we were
Mm.
raising our children and doing what we considered playing the role, so to speak. I mean, I know I
Yes.
did, and I had a great life. I mean, I was happy and doing what I was doing, but then it was like all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, isn't there more? What?
Oh, interesting. You must have hit a soul cycle, maybe, you think? One of the
Yeah,
cycles.
maybe. Let's see. So when does the soul cycle begin? The later
Well,
one?
the later one, well, there's a moon return, which is deep at 54. And then so at 56, you're going to start feeling the shadow of um, of the Saturn. And then at 58.5, Saturn really hits. But around
Okay,
56
that's
too, people, because 7 times 8 is 56, 7-year
yeah,
cycles.
yeah, that makes sense. It's probably my late 50s, when
Mhm.
I just started realizing that something was missing in my life, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I met somebody, how the saying is, when student is ready, the teacher appears.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much what happened with me. And I realized that I was missing a spiritual connection.
Yes. And because our souls come in here, I believe, from the other side to learn and grow and then to go back home. And if you haven't met your goals, your soul goals, and we can easily get mired in the earth plane and you forget about that part unless you have a divorce or a crisis or a health issue or a car accident or something that's going to stir you up. So then the soul will come back. That's Saturn, the taskmaster. What were you here to do again? This is school. Did you forget it? Did you forget? And that's why I opened up my center now. It's like, oh, you have to do a little bit more in this. So it does make sense. It's almost like it's supposed to help you grow and learn. It's supposed to help you get, like, just before you end the school, do what your soul wanted to do when you came here.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I had not have had that, I hadn't heard that before. So that's really that time period. It fits perfectly with my life. So
Yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
that. I
yes,
learned a lot. Thank you. Oh,
yeah.
that's great. That's great, Carolyn. So, to change gears a little bit, I do want to hear about the books that you wrote, because I'm not familiar with them. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your books?
Sure. Yes, my first book is Honor Your Spirit. And that's about, working with spirit and how I combine being a therapist and intuitive and healer, and kind of was really listening to the universal dialogue. You get this on Amazon. This came out a while ago, 2016, so I'm writing another one. And then Soul Wisdom is every year, every month for 15 years, I had newsletters. So it's more of a mindful book. I should really change the title to Mindful Living. You could just open it and get like inspiration on being an empath, intuition, abundance, all spiritual things, vision and creation. There we go. That one opened for planting seeds.
There you go.
Yeah, see, the spirit is
Perfect.
there. And then this workbook, How to Work with a Spirit. When I do my intuitive development, what happens, I use this as a workbook. So in the book, I don't want people just to read. I want them to work with the universe, and that's co-creating. So it has like, what were your childhood dreams? Write them down, seeing the chakra charts, what do you see? What colors do you feel drawn to? How to work with the universe, totem animals, numbers, numerology. So it's a way for people to understand that they're here to grow and learn, but it can be very, easy and simplistic, that the universe is constantly sending us messages over and over again. And we sometimes do not see them, if we're stuck in the earth. So it's like a way to kind of, like wake you up and say, oh, okay, what am I here for? Let me write this down. Oh, I see a crow every day, or even better, hawks, which I love these hawks out here in Connecticut. What does a hawk mean? It's a totem animal, and you can
Yes.
lead your journey by listening to seeing numbers and songs and messages from the universe.
Yes, I love that. That's like once you're aware of that, you see the messages everywhere. Once you're open
Yes.
to it, it's great. Yeah, yeah. It's really
I think
good.
another important thing I just want to slip in about the universe is
Mhm.
that this is the time of the divine feminine. And every 28 years, there's this cycle that I said, the Saturn, but the moon cycle goes in 28 days. And then, the feminine is connected to the moon, and women are creators. So this is the time of the divine feminine for women to be creative, to balance out the male female, women to be more important in terms of creating and co-creating things. The record number of women in Congress, the Me Too movement. So, but it's also part of the cycle that happens, that women are connected to the moon, and that's what's buried, what's underneath. So moon means actually menses, means moon. So, we go with the full moon cycles, we also learn, so there's cycles the universe is teaching us in multi layers, and there's cycles in our lives also.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great insight as well to be aware of. Yeah. I'll have to share that one too. Um, so the other thing I wanted to ask a little bit about that I'm interested in is the theta healing.
Mm,
And that's one of the things that you use in your practice. And I've just recently become aware of it and using it, and especially related to limiting beliefs and how to change those beliefs into more expansive, empowering beliefs. So could
yeah.
you just share a little bit about that with our audience?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's a great modality created by Viana Steibel.
Here's the book.
Yeah, she's wonderful. So I trained with her, luckily, like in 2004. And she was a woman who was a naturopath and an intuitive. And she had cancer. So I'll give you the backstory of her. And she couldn't get rid of her cancer, whatever. She had 3 kids, and it was really hard. So she talked to her cousin, I believe the story's been so long. And she said to her cousin was ill. And then she's like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. I command you to heal. And her cousin healed, and she goes, you should do that for yourself. They were going to take off her leg, amputate her leg. So she went to God and commanded it to heal her leg, and the cancer went away, never came back. Now there's a whole method of training you do with her. She's highly intuitive, and what it is, we heal it not just on the physical level, the soul level, past life, historical level, genetic, okay? Because sometimes we inherit our ancestors' trauma. If we get their cells, their seeds, we might get their memories. Sometimes there's past lives, historical past lives. And I've seen a lot of it working on some crystal shops up here in Connecticut, and the whole witch trials. I didn't realize that Windsor was the first, I live right next to Windsor, was where the first witch trials happened. And Salem was 2 years later. But there are a lot of people I've worked with talk about, yeah, I didn't know that either. Like that, fear of intuition, fear of that. But these women were hung and killed for this. So again, the divine feminine, the power of intuition, the power of training. So when I do theta healing and I say, let's change a belief on a soul level or a historic level, wow, it really happens. And what you do, you muscle test it with kinesiology. So if they say, I'm intuitive and I trust my intuition, and then their muscle is weak, I'm usually doing it this way. There's other ways to muscle test. And they're like, wow, I don't believe I thought I would be strong in that. I'm like, no, it's weak. And then I go up to God. So we take a breath in and out. Breath means spirit. And I go up to the divine and I change it. It's a whole method you have to learn. And then I test it again. They're strong. They're like, wow, that's weird. Most people say they feel like they're a cell phone and they're being charged up. And then I've seen how people's lives have changed. And I do that in therapy sometimes if people are open. And I have, like, on LinkedIn, I have 100 testimonials, and most of those women are, have done theta healing. So, and if you have trauma that you're not aware of or past life stuff, like we say, like since Viana was a naturopath and intuitive, one was, we're all gonna, I'm gonna be burned at the stake, or I'm gonna be hung, or whatever. And everyone may have past lives like that, or historical trauma, or genetic karma that they're carrying on. That's why they're so afraid of their intuition. But intuition is the gateway to co-creating with the universe. So we need this. It's a natural part of who we are as souls, as women, and as beings on the planet, to get the messages from the divine, and then to create it, on the earth plane, as above, so below. So.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. And that is so important, everything that you said, because I think most of us are not aware of, like you said, we're not aware of our beliefs. That's why they're unconscious beliefs, because we're not aware of them. And once you bring them out and then you're able to change them, I've seen people's lives just change dramatically once that shifts.
Oh, you do it there too, at your center?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, I've been doing it in my coaching for a long time, and I never really associated it with theta healing.
Mm.
It's a matter of changing beliefs, but every technique is a little bit different, but the end result is very, very powerful, the same. But I think the way that she does it is probably the most powerful that I've encountered, and the most seeing the best results.
Yes, and it's emotional. Sometimes it's physical. There's a lot of great healers, theta healers out there. And it also can shift people's, and it's very subtle, but then people start changing the way they do things, or changing different jobs, or kind of strengthens the soul. And we're all coming in here to heal our ancestors' trauma, because we don't, because certain cultures like Native Americans always talked about their ancestors, and every culture actually did, if you go back to various cultures, but we haven't really paid attention to it. So it helps to do that. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of work out there being done on collective trauma and ancestral trauma, and like you
Good.
said, all of that is
DNA
helpful. And
healing.
I do, yeah, and I do point
Mhm.
people in that direction when that comes up. So this is great. I really enjoyed, all of this information, and just connecting with you. We have about another minute. Is there anything else that I didn't ask, that you didn't cover yet, that you would like to mention today?
Oh, well, I'm doing a class coming up at the place called the Red Barn in Durham, and it's actually helping women to. It's on February 19th. It's like 1 to 4.
Okay.
So they can look it on my website. So it's helping
Okay.
women to be the divine feminine, to co-create and to heal wounds. So, and I'll be doing another one at Bell and Raven, but this is coming up on February
Okay,
19th.
great. So yeah, so that's coming up in this month of February 2023. And you can go on Carolyn's website, intuitivesoulhealing.com, and see what else is coming up, and check that out, and get in touch with her. If you have any questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to chat with you about anything, right?
Yes, any soul stuff, I'm the person.
Yeah. Well, this is great. And I hope to meet you in person. We're not that
Yes,
far away.
yes.
Maybe you
I
can
haven't
come
been.
down here too. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go down. I grew up in Trumbull, so I want to go back to Westford. I love that place.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll definitely arrange something. Well, thank you
Okay.
so much for being on the show. And
Thank you so much.
thank you to all our viewers and listeners, and see you next time. Okay. Namaste.